Hey everyone, this is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sub That Tutorials and More. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss out on any of our new videos, and check the video description for a link to the Sub That Learning Library app. Inside of our mobile/web app, you can access all of our free tutorials and our neatly organized content libraries, as well as upgrade for access to exclusive content and communities to help you take your craft hobby to the business of your dreams. In this tutorial, I am going to be showing you how to sublimate a can cooler with a Bluetooth speaker. So this is a really cool product. I had not seen this anywhere else. It is available from Johnson's Plastics Plus, and it has a Bluetooth speaker on the bottom, which has become very popular recently. And then it has the option to either be a can cooler or a tumbler by changing out the top part. So I'll kind of show you that so you can see what I'm talking about. But this is such a great product for summer season and really anyone who does summer outdoor activities like fishing or just hanging out on a boat, because it gives you the ability to keep your cans cold with this double wall insulated tumbler metal outside, or keep your beverage hot or cold. And then you also have the benefits of a great Bluetooth speaker. So let's go ahead and turn things around and we'll have a look at what we're working with. Here is a look at our Sublimation Bluetooth tumbler and can cooler in one. So you can see it's got a few different parts here. We have our Bluetooth speaker, which screws right into the bottom and can easily be charged. It does come with the charger. Now, I did test the sound quality on these and it's really good. I demonstrated it in our regular Bluetooth tumbler video. I'm not going to do it in this one because the problem I ran into there was that I just used like 5 seconds of music from my phone, and because it's copywritten, the video got flagged. So the speaker quality is really good for something like this, and I am quite impressed with it. So you can have your speaker on the bottom, and then you have the option to screw in that part so you can keep bottled drinks nice and cool, or doing the regular spout that closes up and has a nice little handle. So you have the tumbler option, and it does come with the straw and the straw cleaner. I love this idea for really any type of outdoor recreation. This can also be a great product to push during wedding season for bachelorette and bachelor parties. This is just something that is really fun, really versatile, has a pretty broad range in terms of audience. It's really just going to be about how you market it. So for kind of an all the time, I can see this being marketed well towards beach towns and beach season, as well as people who enjoy things like fishing and boating, because it kind of gives you an all-in-one option. You get your music, you get your beverage, and something that is stylish and fun. We're going to be making this today for someone who is big into fishing, so perfect application for this product. We want to go ahead and get our measurements of our piece here so that we can set our design up in Affinity Designer properly. So we've got our fabric tape measure together. Mine's a little bit of a mess. I have been seeing all these really great digital ones that like zip on. Need to get some of those because my other one here is always a nice mess. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get our circumference first. You can see that's just a hair under 10 inches. So we will go with 10 inches with maybe like a 1/16 added, just so we have enough to trim it and have it overlap nicely. And then we're looking at, so I have the one cut off. So this is 6.5 inches for the height. Now we always want to be mindful of the edges. So I might just do that a little bit less than the 6.5 inches. So that was 6.5 inches for our height and 10 inches for our width. All right, let's head over to Affinity Designer and get this set up. We are working in Affinity Designer on a Windows PC. If you are using the Mac version of the software, you may notice some small nuanced differences in your Studio interface, but it should be easy enough to follow along with all of the steps that we are doing today. We always want to start by opening up a document that is the size of the page that we plan to print on and the orientation our page will be in our printer. This small step in your setup is going to help you have seamless printing every single time. Come to File and then New or New Document. For the measurements that we got of 10 inches wide by 6.5 inches high, we can use a letter size paper for today's transfer. I'm going to go ahead and select that right from my presets. You can adjust if it's portrait or landscape by clicking these little icons up here. Now the default for any of these printing presets is going to be the CMYK color profile, so you are going to want to come to that color tab and make sure that you have changed that color format to RGB/8 with the color profile sRGB IEC 61966-2.1. As a reminder, your color profile is not the same as an ICC profile. If you have a dedicated ICC profile for your printer, that is selected when you go to print your actual design setup. That is not selected during this step of document setup. If navigating all of these terms and understanding why they matter is confusing to you, be sure to check out our Mastering Sublimation Color series available in the That Learning Library app. Now, as a reminder as well, if you are using an older Mac and you're facing some color issues on print, you want to go ahead and try the Adobe RGB 1998 color profile. This is an older color profile that does tend to do better with older Macs, as Mac computers are known to have some output discrepancies between the computer and the printer. I always like to have a transparent background, so I have that checked, and I like to make sure that my margins and bleed line are all either deselected or turned to 0. Once you have all of your settings ready to go, you can go ahead and click Create. Now, I'm going to be using a photo today, which is not usually the kind of project that I do. I'm not the biggest fan of photo projects in general. I think that there's just so much more amazing things you can do with sublimation, but this was a customer request, and so we are going to outfit it accordingly. For a project like this, I like to start with creating a rectangle based on the measurements that we got for our Bluetooth can cooler. This is going to give us a space to clip in our photograph in this case, but if you were using a digital paper, you would still want to follow this step so you can clip it in and make sure everything is sized accordingly without it being skewed. So I'm going to come to my Tools panel, which is here on the left sidebar, and I'm going to select the rectangle tool. You can click and drag to drag that across your document. And then I'm going to come down to the Transform panel in the bottom right corner. I'm going to make sure to unlock that aspect ratio, and then I'm going to go ahead and enter in my exact measurements. So we had 10.0625, so that was going to give us 10 1/16 of an inch. And then our height was 6.5 inches. Now I want to actually be able to see all of this, and currently I can't see anything that's hanging off of my document. You can change that by coming to View, View Mode, and deselecting Clip to Canvas. Now you can see that you've got that full range there of even what is off of the canvas. Be sure to select your rectangle and come to that color tab and choose that open circle for the stroke and choose the no fill option. This will just make sure that you don't have any kind of stray line there that is going to impact your print. Now it does currently have a fill. That doesn't really matter. We want the fill so we can see it right now. We're going to be filling this with our photo. So our next step is to import our photograph, or if you were using digital paper, you would import that. You can do that by selecting the Place tool, which is this little picture tool in your Tools panel, or by coming to File and then Place. This will open up your File Explorer where you can select whichever type of file you want to use for your design. When you see the downward arrow with the portal, that means you are ready to add this to your document. You can do one click on your mouse to import it at full size, or you can click and drag to size it as you go. So what I want to do is start by kind of lining this up with the top corner here of my rectangle. And you'll notice that when I do that, I'm getting that red and green guide. If you can see that, there's the red horizontal guide and the green vertical guide. Now those are our snapping guides that are letting us know that we're aligned with our rectangle. If you don't see your snapping guide, simply make sure that this magnet icon is selected. Oh, it looks like we're pretty close to the right size here. If I just lift that up so you can see it a little bit more, we've got a little bit excess picture, but that's okay. We're going to be clipping it inside and centering it anyways. So I always like to go ahead and just center things right off the bat. And you can see that I know that it's centered because I see the red horizontal line at the top, middle, and bottom, and I also see the green horizontal line. So we are centered both on the page and with the rectangle and the picture centered to each other. But if you ever just want to be really sure, you can click and drag across those elements, and you can come to your alignment tool, which is this little bar graph icon, and simply do center, center, and apply, and everything should be centered. So now we want to go ahead and clip our picture into our rectangle. Affinity Designer has a one-step clipping function where you literally just click on the picture of the layer that you want to clip into and then drag it so your cursor touches the name of the layer that you are clipping into. So now our photograph, if we select that, we can see that it is extended past the edges of our rectangle, and we have our rectangle right there. So this has allowed us to just adequately clip in this picture into our shape so that it'll fit our can cooler accordingly. Depending on what you're working with, you may need to adjust your picture or your digital paper. What you want to avoid doing is selecting that layer and doing something like this. That's one of the worst things that you can do. Always aim to not change the aspect ratio of something that you're using. Instead, decide the best way to strategically crop the image or digital paper. So I had this centered originally, but it looks a little off because like his hand is cut off here and then there's just this empty water space over here. So I'm actually going to shift that over. And I think that that looks much better because now his hand is all the way in, and we'll still have a seam line, of course, but we just want to make sure that it's the best crop that we can get for the photo. So that was just a small adjustment. If you need to make any adjustments or size with this, always make sure that you have opened up your group and you're selecting the actual embedded layer, the picture or the digital paper. I wanted to rotate this and center it on my page so it'll be ready to print. So I'm going to select that main group, the top rectangle layer in this case, and then I'm going to come to my rotation tools and simply rotate that clockwise or counterclockwise, and then I will go ahead and center it on the page. Centering it on the page is not mandatory, but it is my preferred no matter what. So now that it is centered, we can come to File and then Print. You're going to select your printer from your drop-down menu and then select the Properties tab. This is where, if you are using a converted sublimation printer, you will set any type of color correction settings, your ICC profile, and any paper type or anything else settings that you have to do. If you're like me and you're using the Epson SureColor F570 Pro sublimation printer, you don't have to do anything other than select your paper size. So currently my last print was using our 17 by 12 inch rolled paper. We're not doing that today, so I'm going to come in here and find our letter page, 8.5 by 11, and make sure that this little picture matches the way this feeds into the printer. The Epson SureColor F570 Pro has both an auto sheet feeder and the option to have rolled paper in 17-inch width or 24-inch width. I love the versatility of this printer, and I love that I don't have to buy a bunch of different sizes of paper. I only buy the letter size sheets, and then I keep the rolls on hand because it's just more practical. Underneath your source, you want to be sure to select your auto sheet feeder in this case. And then under media type, we're going to go ahead and choose the rigid option. Now your print does need to be mirrored for this project. In this particular printer dialog box, that is underneath the layout tab, and it will be mirrored by default because we're already using a printer that's made for sublimation. So some of the defaults are already in place for us. Never hurts to check. And of course, if you're using a converted sublimation printer, you do want to make sure that you have checked to mirror your image on print. Now, I don't need a print preview, so I have not selected that. Once we're all set, we can click OK and then OK again, and it's going to send this off to print. Once your sublimation transfer is printed, you are going to want to trim it nicely all around your edges, making sure you don't have any white space left anywhere. We're going to need some heat tape and also some shrink wrap. Now, I will link the recommended shrink wrap size to use for this as recommended by Johnson's Plastics Plus below this video. For me today, I have a bunch of this particular size that I bought in error back during the pandemic. So that's going to be the size that I use. It's a bit big for this, but the 20-ounce sublimation tumbler wrap is a little bit too small for these. So I just have this. It's literally collecting dust, so I prefer to use that. Always make sure that your tumbler is facing the correct direction before you wrap it. And we're going to do our best to get this straight. Line up our edges really nicely. Okay, anytime you're using shrink wrap, you want to be mindful if there is any kind of slope around the edges at the top or the bottom, because when you shrink your shrink wrap on, it's going to crinkle your paper. So you can see I've got a little bit there, so I'm actually just going to trim that off the bottom really quick before we wrap this around. Always worth checking so you don't end up ruining a tumbler. When you see that, what a lot of people call ghosting, where it's kind of like a wobbly white at the top and bottom, it's actually called warbling, and that's what causes it. It's because your transfer is a little bit too long and it crinkles because this has got just a subtle taper to it. And when you have your shrink wrap, or even when you're using a tumbler press, it can end up crinkling your paper down, and it causes that ripple effect. We don't want that, so we're just going to trim this really quick. All right, so I just trimmed off about a 32nd of an inch. Now we're going to line it up again, make sure we pull it nice and tight. And check those edges again. All right, I think we're good. You want to have just a very, very slight overlap at your seam. And again, make sure you're pulled nice and tight. I always like to do my first one over the edge. It makes it easy to pull. And you do not have to do all down the seam. You can just do one or two pieces. If you're doing a tumbler press, I definitely recommend just doing one or two pieces to make it easier to remove. But when you're using shrink wrap, I prefer to do it all the way down. That way I can use it to rip it with the shrink wrap. All right, so once you are all taped up, I always like to give it a good rub just to make sure there's no air gaps. And we'll go ahead and pop our shrink wrap over. Now when you're doing shrink wrap, especially when it's larger like this, let's adjust you guys. I always do a little bit at the top, a little bit at the bottom, so that the shrink wrap can kind of cling to either end before doing the middle. And when it's bigger like this, I always just like to pull it in one direction, make life a little bit easier. It will all shrink down, so don't stress about it being larger. This is just a low heat gun. Now you do not need to shrink your shrink wrap until all of the ripples and stuff are gone, but I always make sure to get the edges really good so that I can double check one last time if I have any wrinkled paper under there. So make sure you always check for that. That's going to help you alleviate any type of that warbling, again, that people often mistake for ghosting. Now I'm going to be using my convection toaster oven today. Mine is just a pretty generic Black & Decker convection toaster oven. I think it was like 60 bucks at Walmart. Nothing special about this. For this one that I have, I keep it at 400 degrees for all of my tumblers. But honestly, when you're doing tumblers in a convection oven, it really just depends. You have to trial and error. You're going to find somewhere between 380 and 400 degrees is going to be your sweet spot. And typically somewhere between 7 minutes and 8 or 9 minutes, depending on the size of the tumbler. So for this, I'm just going to go with my standard 20-ounce tumbler time and temperature, which for this particular oven that I own is 400 degrees for 7 minutes. Again, you may have a little bit lower temperature, you may have a minute or two more or less. It really depends on your particular convection toaster oven. All of them are going to be a little bit different. You are going to have to trial and error if you are new, but once you get your settings, honestly, life's a breeze. So let's go ahead and pop that in there. Now you do not have to rotate these. I never rotate. Rotating just gives a chance for the heat to escape. I usually leave mine in and they are solid and good to go. So we're going to let that run down and we'll be back. Our time is just about up, so we're going to go ahead and pull this out and let it cool till it's about warm. You know, we don't want it so hot we can't touch it, but we do want it to still be warm. It makes it a lot easier to peel off all of that shrink wrap. Now, I love to set mine on all of my glass items and any tumblers or ceramic on these silicone mats. I just got these at Walmart. I'm sure you can pick something up like this on Amazon. They're technically like a dish drying mat, but you can see this one's not very big. I think it's maybe 8 by 10 and it was like a 2-pack. So I love these for exactly this purpose. We can see our design through. That's always a positive sign that we are got a nice transfer. I always check for that. All right, we're gonna let that cool so that we can get it ready to peel. So this has cooled down enough. When it's still somewhat warm, it does make it a little bit easier to peel everything back. Well, sometimes. You know, it's funny because I always have great luck peeling in one swipe when I don't do videos, but when I do videos, it backfires. There we go. So I like to use that little tape pull tab. There we go. I'm losing my daylight here, but you can see our photo looks pretty good. I mean, this wasn't the best quality photo. We're always kind of limited to what customers give us, but it looks pretty good. So now we can go ahead and put it all back together. And it is ready to pack back in the box that it came in. I hope that you enjoyed this sublimation tutorial for the Bluetooth bottle cooler and tumbler in one. Be sure to download the Sub That Learning Library app if you haven't already. You can find all of our tutorials in our neatly organized categories quickly and easily, as well as enjoy our sublimation help community. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great rest of your day.